Thanks for listening to Agile Standup, the show where we talk about all things related to Agile, Scrum, and Kanban, leaving no subject professional, unprofessional, awesome, insensitive, or otherwise untouched. Today, we are going to speak about the signs of a good product owner, what should a solid PO be doing for the Scrum team, and the concept of the product advisor.
So, John, actually, this is one of the topics that I've seen a number of questions come up on LinkedIn lately. So
the signs of a good product owner?
Yeah,
that's a good one. Let's talk
about
that.
What is a good product owner? So I'll give you my take. I think that a good product owner has to have a good vision of the product. Or if the product owner is a technical product owner, I think that they should have a good vision of what the technical vision should look like for a team. So I think that when they come to a team and, they basically ask for work to be done, I think that they need to paint the big picture of the problem that needs to be solved.
Agreed. And vision is key. I know that somebody that we have worked with in the past, I think, or at least I've worked with in the past, said it's the CEO of the product, which is definitely cool. They do need to know what has gone on in the past. They don't need to be an expert at it, but they need to know definitely where the product is going. And just as you said, more importantly, they need to be the voice of the customer. They represent the customer in the business and on the team. If the team cannot trust that the product owner has the customer in mind or knows what's going on, well, then what's the product owner there for?
Exactly. I mean, I think that one of the hardest things, though, right, it is figuring out what problem are you trying to solve?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And we look to the product owner to do that.
Exactly, because when the product owner goes into planning, grooming, or even quarterly planning, anytime you have a team that needs to understand what they're working on, I think one of the biggest questions is, what are we trying to solve? Which
is a perfect segue into what should a solid PO be doing for the Scrum team? What should they be doing?
Well, what should they be doing?
I think
there's a number of things.
There is. So just to kind of kick it off, and I think that you're also on the same page on this one, or you're going to cover it at least, is that the PO, of course, as we talked about, needs to be the voice of the customer. They also need to be kind of an industry expert. Like I would want to look to the product owner, not just necessarily, hey, what does our customer want, but also, hey, consider also what other people are doing, or other competitors are doing, because Henry Ford had a really good quote where he said, if I asked what the customer wanted, they would have just asked for a faster horse.
Right.
Which I've said before, I'm sure. But that concept is really interesting because with the faster horse concept, if your customer just is saying, I want this more, I want more, well, maybe the product owner can do some research and maybe talk to their customer and give them some ideas about maybe different directions that they can take, trying to provide solutions for them that then, of course, the team can then later bring to fruition.
So I think one of the key qualities of a good product owner is definitely understanding the product, hands down. I think that as a product owner, if you guys are listening, you should have a really good understanding of your product. You should have a good understanding of who is using your product and how they're using it, right? But I think another thing that a product owner should also have a really good quality is that a product owner should allow their dev teams to actually listen or interact with the customer base. Because a product owner is going to have an understanding of how the customer uses the product, but dev is always going to have some really interesting questions when they actually dive down into those details about how the user experience should be or what the customer is expecting. So I feel like a good product owner will also allow their dev team, I wouldn't even say allow, because in Scrum, that's how it's designed, right? The Scrum team does have access to the customer base. So I do feel that a product owner who has good quality product owner skill set would allow the dev team to actually have access to listen in to the customer feedback.
So that's a really happy path, and I'm glad to hear you talk about that, because there are product owners out there that do not want the customer to, or do not want the team to have access to the customer. That, I think, goes deeper than just the role. Maybe some control issues there, something like that.
I'm not sure what it is. I mean, I think that, Agile has been great, but I think that everyone has taken their own interpretation of what the Agile framework should look like, and it's become siloed in many places. I'm so thankful that over the course of the last few months, I've worked with a product owner who's very mature in the sense that she actually have encouraged the developers to actually go on site with the customer to see what that experience looks like and what it should look like.
Right.
So that when we're building these things out and we're figuring out what problems and challenges we're trying to solve, it's also coming not just from a PO perspective or PM perspective, but it's also coming from a dev perspective.
Right.
Because they've talked to the actual customer. And I think that's really key in success.
Right. And actually, I can speak to that personally, because that was my favorite part. And I always took somebody with me when I was a PO on a previous project. I was able to go out, and our industry definitely literally had shops where we could go out.
That.
Right. There you go. And we could actually go out to shops, and I could take some people with me, and we could go and experience it together. And then bringing that experience back, it's invaluable, because the conversations that you have are now fraught with imagination. It's not just assumptions. This is what they want. I've seen it myself.
And I think the key word here is assumptions, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's nice to have, you don't have to have every detail defined when you're trying to figure out what problem needs to be solved. But I think the nice thing here is that you're actually seeing it from the user perspective. And sometimes we make assumptions about how someone uses something, but it may not necessarily be how they use it.
Exactly.
So I think it's great to actually get some content around how they navigate through these applications, tools, or what have you.
Back to the whole idea of control. So I know that we talked about that a little bit, or I talked about that, about how some product owners will not necessarily allow or provide an environment for their teams to interface with the actual customers themselves. Whereas you said that was best, and I completely agree, because I've done it myself. But as far as what would we kind of look to a product owner to do with that if they have that idea of control and aren't letting their teams do that?
Control reminds me so much of the Janet Jackson song.
See, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Anyway, no. But listen, there are some product owners and PMs who do, and I don't know I don't know what place it comes from, but there is a sense of wanting to have control.
Yes.
And I think that some of the best product owners are those who are willing to give up that control. Like, there is no control. If the development team needs access to whoever they need access to, it's great. They can get that. If the team wants to choose how they want to, and I mean, this is part of Scrum, right? How they want to self-organize about solving this problem.
Yeah.
That should be, how do you say, we should encourage that, right? Yeah. Self-organization around how they want to approach the problem. Product owner control, giving up that control means don't tell people how to solve it. Just tell them what you need. Right. Don't give them the details on how their approach should be to solve it. Leave that up to your developers. That's why they're devs. They're devs.
They're devs. Yeah, right. They're devs. I think now we have a bumper sticker. They're devs.
They're developers. You got to trust them. They know how to approach that solution. So a good product manager / product owner.
Ooh, you combine them. What are you doing?
That's how it rolls. So you've got to learn to give that trust that your team is going to basically figure out how to do that.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say to follow up on that, is that it's all about trust. Right. And the product owner also too, I think that in the industry that there's kind of a misconception, and you mentioned the product manager thing and you actually combine them in your sentence, but I'm thinking that there could be some kind of institutionalized notion of a product owner, which may be equivalent in their mind to a manager or something, and they think that this is something that I need to own, this is mine, and if I'm not doing it or if I don't have control over it, then it's out of control and it's not going to get done. So I wonder if there's also some of that idea, which we almost kind of need to break, because I'd like to see the product owner role become less of a manager, less of a telling them what to do, and more to kind of a advisor type role or something, which here's a crazy idea, right? So check this out.
Wait, what?
I know. Right. So on that, because we use a few words there like advisor and stuff, this is going to be nuts. Bear with me. We get rid of the product owner role.
Dun, dun, dun,
I know.
Oh,
I know, right?
What are you saying, John?
So what I'm saying is that this, and this is definitely
John's crazy.
I know. I am crazy.
He's a little bit crazy.
But that's okay, because you guys, hopefully for those of you still listening by now, are going to definitely get something where it's like, what the hell? This guy is insane. Make sure to hit that subscribe button too. So, as far as that concept of getting rid of the product owner, one thing that actually we were kind of talking about is saying, if you have a product advisor, it can be similar to something like an agile coach, where an agile coach can work with multiple teams, can really work with just coaching people on process, on the mindset, on the framework, whatever chosen framework it is, and then go from there. Whereas instead of having a product owner, one per team, maybe you have a product advisor that does a similar function to an agile coach, except instead of focusing on the team in the process, they focus on the product, and they can maybe then work with multiple teams or different teams in order to deliver. Now, what this does is that doesn't necessarily say that there's one quote unquote product advisor to dispense the vision and foster that vision, but instead it's the teams that are going to be self-organizing and owning that vision. So that concept, as far out there as it is, it definitely requires that self-organizing team. So I would say that's like Agile 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, something out there. But it is definitely an interesting idea that I'm starting to talk about, where it's like, hey, you know what? Why do we need so many product owners, especially if there's not a lot of people that are happy with their product owners out there? I mean, frequently we hear that, since we're on the subject of product owners, about, oh, I don't want to include them in my retros, or oh, you know, the product owner's a problem here. Well, if there's so many problems, I wonder if maybe it's becoming systemic, and should we try taking a look at that role, maybe doing something different?
So it's interesting that you say that. I think I've worked in a place where there was like a head product owner over all the different components of the actual application. I thought that was interesting, but at the same time, I feel like it can be a little overwhelming. So I'm not going to say that I'm not open to the idea. I think that that would work on technical teams, right? So I'm trying to figure out how this would work on actual like feature and product, like front end customer facing teams.
Well, I think you said it best earlier, because wanting and encouraging the teams to go out and visit their own customer base and really, I think that's going to play and dovetail well into that, because basically what it's going to say is the teams go out there and they build their own relationships, they build their own vision, then they come back and they create. Whereas you have a product owner now that's kind of like the go-between, where it's like, well, let me go check if that's okay with the customer, or, oh, yes, this works for the customer. Well, what's better than having that direct connection from the developer, the person hitting the keys and crafting the code, to the actual people that need it? I mean, a lot of people do that today. You know, carpenters go out there and they work directly with the customer.
I think that could work for some organizations. I think it's just it's important to make sure that your devs have the time to do that, and that that's something they want to participate in, right?
That's a good point.
Yeah, because that could eat up at a actual sprint or a cycle if you're using Kanban. So I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's all about communication.
We'll tell you what,
transparency.
How about things like that become spikes, and instead of having a research project where you sit there, and I'm just making all this up on the fly, by the way.
You are.
But yes, I am.
It's okay.
You can tell. No, but
okay.
So like, instead of like having a spike where it's like, let me figure out how to, you know, work with SOAP UI, maybe instead it's like, hey, go out to the customer, spend a day with the customer. I'm not saying go out and get a hotel for 3 months and sit there with the customer, but I'm saying, hey, if you can go out there for a day, maybe take somebody out to lunch and hear it, I think that's pretty good, and it's invaluable. And then they can come back and tell the team, or even just work with them during backlog refinement or something, to really help shape up that user story statement.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that, you know, no matter what approach, you know, someone decides to take, organization, company, or what have you, I think that it's always important for the devs to have that communication with the customer. I'm a huge advocate of that. I've worked in different organizations, from small to large. I think there's a lot of benefits in the devs actually having direct access to the customer base, and however you craft it, whether it be advisor or just a team meeting with the actual user base, there's just a huge benefit in that.
So just kind of summarizing that point, it sounds like you're coming around a little bit to the idea of
Well, I'm not sure if I'm coming around. I still have to I'm still thinking about it and soaking it in. I'll be honest with you, John. I think it's a good concept, and I think it's one that could definitely work in the future.
There's a but.
There might be a but. No, but listen, I think at the end of the day, I did say but. I think what I'm finding in a lot of organizations is that the product owners / product managers are oftentimes by organizations held accountable for the delivery of the product. And so I think that it's hard to like not fully remove yourself, but it's hard to really remove yourself from that front line. I think that you need to be involved because it's kind of your role and expectation.
Well, no, you're exactly right, and I guess the idea that I'm offering here is so like crazy because yes, I mean it's actually saying getting rid of the role, period. Not having the product owner role and having instead the product advisor role. So instead of having 3 Scrum teams, having 3 different product owners, maybe there's one product advisor.
Oh, that could work. I mean, that's the beauty of Agile, right?
You can try stuff out.
There's this evolution, exactly, and you're basically in
experimentation
and adapt.
Inspecting it, of course.
And you always have to constantly be inspecting and adapting with Agile, right? It's not cookie cutter.
It's just a crazy idea I had, that's all. Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, it's one worth visiting, and I think in a lot of companies, I think might be in that position to visit that, and so it's open field. Agile is always changing. You just never know.
And on that, thank you for playing along in the Agile Stand-Up. Today we spoke about the signs of a good product owner, what should a solid PO be doing for the Scrum team, and of course the concept of the product advisor. How'd that go, Christine?
Mm-hmm.
just
No, it's good.
Okay.
You didn't like it? It's a concept of a product advisor.
I did. Well, I'd like it better if you say it to the microphone.
That was good.
Fucking Christine.
Fucking John.
Wow. So how'd that go, Christine?
I thought that was pretty good, except for like, so are you thinking aliens are gonna come and just take product and owners and managers away, just beam them up into what?
Not thinking, hoping, I think.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm not. I mean, they're doing the whole thing with Area 51 lately. I mean, maybe we can talk the aliens into taking a few extras up.
We should go there and podcast Agile. What does Area 51 think about Agile?
That would be awesome, but I don't know. My AC's broke in my car, so it's probably not gonna.
I'm gonna have to pass on that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
AC
to.
For Area 51,
no, I'm sorry, but
No, but I mean, on a serious note, I think that some of the points that you brought up are pretty valid and thought provoking. I think like I mentioned earlier, Agile industry is always changing, and I think it's worth really retrospecting on.
I like that, retrospecting.
Mm-hmm.
And since we're making up words, do we have any impediments?
No.
What do you mean
no impediments?
No impediments.
No, I have no impediments this time around.
Cool.
I'm sure I will on the next podcast, though.
All right, sounds good. No impediments myself either.
I think you're good to go.